On April 4th, 2025, just 2 days after new American tariffs were announced under what the Trump administration called Liberation Day, China made a move that caught much of the world by surprise. Rare earth shipments leaving Chinese ports suddenly slowed down or stopped entirely. Export licenses were delayed, customs inspections increased, and cargo sat idle at ports. Rare earth minerals are not widely known by the public, but they are among the most important materials in the modern global economy. These 17 elements are essential for high-tech manufacturing. They are used in fighter jet engines, missile guidance systems, advanced radar, electric vehicle motors, smartphones, wind turbines, and artificial intelligence hardware. And China dominates this industry. Today, China processes more than 90% of the world's rare earth materials and manufactures most of the powerful magnets derived from them. This means that even if rare earth minerals are mined in other countries, they often still need to be refined in China before they can be used. When shipments slowed in early 2025, governments around the world suddenly realized how dependent global industry had become on one supply chain. At the time, officials in Washington tried to reassure the public. The National Economic Council director said the administration was studying the situation carefully and considering its options. Rare earths, he explained, were simply a part of many industries. But behind that careful language was a serious reality. The United States and many of its allies rely heavily on Chinese rare earth processing. This dependency became clear during the spring of 2025. According to several industry analyses, exports of rare earth magnets from China to major technology manufacturing countries like Japan and South Korea dropped sharply during that period. The United States also experienced supply disruptions. China was not targeting just one country. Instead, the slowdown showed that Beijing had the ability to influence supply chains across the entire global economy. But rare earth minerals are only one part of a much larger economic strategy. Over the past decade, China has built what analysts often describe as a three-pillar economic structure designed to protect its interests in a world increasingly defined by geopolitical competition. These pillars involve supply chains, financial markets, and global payment systems. The first pillar is export control and industrial leverage. China passed its export control law in 2020, creating a legal framework that allows Beijing to restrict the export of certain materials, technologies, and equipment. In recent years, China has expanded these controls to include several rare earth elements and advanced processing technologies. The purpose of these controls is not simply economic, they are also strategic. By regulating exports of key materials, China can protect its domestic industries while also maintaining leverage in negotiations with other countries. This approach reflects a broader shift in global politics, where supply chains themselves have become tools of national strategy. The second pillar involves financial influence, particularly in relation to the United States Treasury market. For many years, China was one of the largest foreign holders of U.S. government debt. At its peak in 2013, China held well over $1 trillion in U.S. Treasury securities. These holdings helped finance American government spending and symbolized the deep financial interdependence between the two economies. However, in recent years, China has gradually reduced its Treasury holdings. By late 2025, those holdings had declined significantly compared to their earlier peak. This does not mean China is abandoning U.S. debt entirely. Treasury securities are still considered one of the safest investments in the world. But the gradual reduction suggests that Beijing is diversifying its reserves and reducing its exposure to U.S. financial assets. Other countries have also explored similar diversification strategies, spreading their reserves across different currencies and assets. The third pillar of China's strategy focuses on global payment systems. For decades, most international financial transactions have relied on a messaging network known as SWIFT. Because the United States plays a central role in the system, Washington has sometimes used financial sanctions to restrict access to global payments. In response, China has been developing an alternative infrastructure known as the Cross-Border Interbank Payment System, or CIPS. This system allows banks to process international payments using China's currency, the renminbi. Although CIPS is still much smaller than SWIFT, it represents an effort to build a parallel financial network that could reduce dependence on Western institutions. At the same time, China has been promoting the international use of its currency through trade agreements and digital payment technology, including experiments with a digital version of the renminbi. Taken together, these developments illustrate how economic competition between major powers is evolving. In the past, geopolitical rivalry was often defined by military alliances and territorial disputes. Today, it increasingly involves supply chains, technology standards, financial infrastructure, and access to critical resources. The United States has also responded with its own strategy. American policymakers have pushed for domestic mining projects, partnerships with allied countries, and investment in alternative supply chains for rare earth minerals and other strategic materials. There have also been discussions about developing rare earth resources in places such as Australia, Canada, Greenland, and parts of Africa. However, building new supply chains takes time. Mining projects require years of exploration, environmental review, and infrastructure development before they can begin large-scale production. For this reason, the global economy is currently in a transitional phase. Countries are trying to balance economic efficiency with national security concerns, while companies are reassessing where they source critical materials. Trade tensions between the United States and China have therefore become part of a much larger transformation. Rather than a simple dispute over tariffs or trade deficits, the situation reflects a deeper shift in the structure of globalization itself. China remains one of the world's largest manufacturing powers and continues to run large trade surpluses. The United States, meanwhile, maintains significant advantages in finance, innovation, and advanced technology sectors. Both countries are deeply connected to the global economy, and both rely on international markets. This interdependence makes the rivalry complicated. Neither side can easily separate from the other without causing significant disruption to global supply chains and financial markets. As a result, the economic competition between Washington and Beijing is likely to continue for many years. The key question is not simply who is winning, but how the global economic system will evolve as countries adapt to a more multipolar world. Rare earth minerals, payment systems, financial markets, and trade policies may seem like technical issues, but together they shape the foundations of modern industry and global power, and the decisions made today about these systems will influence the balance of economic power for decades to come.